Namaste and welcome. I'm Laura, live Namasturm Yoga. This is going to be a yin yoga practice for beginners. So go ahead and have a seat on your mat just to kind of get prepared. So I wanted to do a yin yoga practice for beginners. Even if you've practiced hatha yoga before, yin may be new to you. So I really wanted to give you an introduction to the poses and just really guide you through a practice. So I will be giving plenty of alignment instruction and sort of detailed ways to transition from one pose to another, as well as guidance into the practice as a whole. Yin yoga is different from hatha yoga in that first of all, there's only about 15 to 20 poses that are used in yin yoga, sometimes with some small variations, and occasionally in a class there'll be like an additional added stretch that happens, but you can pretty easily get familiar with the basic poses of the practice. But they are all very passive poses, and the goal is to avoid engaging your muscles. Instead, we're going to try to release, let go, relax. And in addition to the muscles being stretched, we're actually trying to stretch some of the more still or less flexible parts of our body, such as connective tissue, our joints, our tendons, our ligaments. So we're really just trying to release and let go. We do not need to be warmed up to do that. So we can actually work with our bodies pretty cold, so we can start right into a yin practice without feeling like we need to do a bunch of moving around to warm up. And in some ways, having our muscles less flexible will help us to go into these poses and stretch some of the other tissue that we're targeting. So the first pose we're going to transition to today is a squat. So go ahead and take your legs, uncross them, and bring your feet underneath you. If you can keep your feet parallel, go ahead and do that. But if you need to turn the toes out, that's okay. And as you're squatting, you may find that you can't get the heels to the floor, and that's also okay. But if you can, bring the heels to the floor, and then we're really just going to kind of round into it and release. A squatting position is going to work in the hips. It's also going to work in the knees a little bit. If this feels painful, find a way to make it easier for you. So you could actually sit on the floor if you need to and just hug your knees in. Or again, lifting the heels and not forcing them down. Support yourself with your hands as much as you need to. Another variation on this pose that you may find is a toe squat, in which the knees come to the floor and then you just sit back on the heels with the toes tucked underneath you. And this can be kind of an intense stretch for the feet or the toes. But if you want to do this one instead of this squat, you certainly may. We're going to be holding poses today for about 2 minutes. In a typical yin class, poses are held for longer. So sometimes maybe just 2 minutes, but up to as many as 5 minutes in a single pose. But because I wanted to show you kind of all of the basic poses, we're going to hold all of them for a little bit of a shorter time so we can get through them all. A typical class, you wouldn't probably be doing all of the poses. It would just be a select handful. You can let yourself round down and just give in here and breathe. All right, and then we're going to move to the mat. We're going to come to the floor. We're going to move to Sphinx Pose. So lower your belly down and prop yourself up on your forearms. Elbows under shoulders. If you are a practitioner of just regular hatha yoga, some of these poses will be very familiar, although many of them will have different names. So I'll talk through that as we get there. But for now, we're in Sphinx Pose. So we're relaxing the legs behind us. The low body is completely relaxed. The arms are actually working a little in that they're propping us up. So you can a little bit press down into the hands. And now Sphinx can transition to seal pose. So if you spread the fingers wide, you can just start to pick your elbows up off the floor. The chest is dropping down. So I like to think of this, if you imagine that your from your neck to your navel is like a string of beads or Christmas tree lights or whatever you can think of that can kind of swag or sway. We're just going to let ourselves drop down into that space. You can let your head relax down and the neck release. And then as you want to or choose to go deeper, the arms are working a little bit here. You can start to walk the hands in a little closer. The arms straighten, we come up a little higher, and there's just a deeper bend in the back or sway or swag that happens with the torso. And breathe. And then we're going to move to Child's Pose, which you'll probably be familiar with. So use your hands to help you. I like to take the knees wide in Child's Pose and bring the feet together, although it can be done with the knees together. Bring your hips back to your heels, walk your hands out, relax your arms, and let the forehead rest completely on the floor. So very passive. I'm not going to be working with any props today, but if you like to work with a prop, in a pose like Child's Pose, you could put that like a block between your feet and rest your hips on the block if you need to. So there are situations where you might find use for a block or a folded up blanket to support you, but it can be done without props. Your arms are relaxed, as I mentioned, forehead just rests down. And then just breathe. And you might choose to work with an Ujjayi breath here if you're familiar with that. Otherwise, just let the breathing be steady, maybe a little deeper than usual. See if you can bring your focus to your breath as you hold. All right, so we're going to transition to a low lunge that's called Dragon Pose. So let's step the right foot forward. Use your right hand to help you if you need to, but we want to have that foot far enough away from the back knee that as we lunge, our knee is basically going to be supported by our ankle or our shin. So if the foot is way tucked in, this can actually strain the knee too much. So make any adjustments you need to. And then maybe walk that foot just a little bit open to the side, and we're creating space inside the knee so that our shoulder can move down. Knee over ankle, do the best you can to keep the shin pretty vertical. Start to lower down, and some of you might be able to take your forearms to the ground. If you can't, it's okay. Again, this is a place you could put your forearms on a block, or you can stay propped on your hands. We're trying to relax in the legs and let the hips and the back quads stretch. But the arms can be used actively if you need to prop yourself up out of the pose. As you feel like you can sink deeper, move out of your way. Feel free to relax your neck here. Let your head hang down. As poses start to increase in intensity and you feel sensation, stay connected to your breath. And some people also like to work with a mantra here. So if you have one that you know that you're familiar with, that gives you some comfort or feels right, you can work with that as well. Breathe. And then we're going to transition to the other side. So a lot of these poses have two sides. Obviously, we have two legs. So we'll be doing them twice, once on each side. So step your left foot forward. Do the best you can to transition with some ease, not a lot of strain here. And then the right leg is just back behind you, and we can start to drop down. So as you can imagine, in a full practice, we would generally be holding most of these poses almost twice as long as we're holding them today. So the intensity grows. Hopefully 2 minutes is enough to just give you a sense of what it feels like to actually spend some time in these deep stretches, but without causing a lot of strain. So just breathe, let yourself focus. All right, and then leaving Dragon Pose, we're gonna move into Swan. So step the left foot back, and we're gonna move again the right foot forward, but instead of a lunge, we're gonna drop the right knee down. And this is, if you're familiar with hatha yoga, this is what we use for pigeon stretch. But Swan is very similar, but we're gonna start upright with the body. So the shin is gonna cross the mat, and then you're gonna use your hands to kind of hold yourself up, letting the front of the body really open. Because we're gonna spend a little bit more time here in most practices, you might choose to rock a little to your right hip for a moment and bring your right shin a little further forward so it's more parallel with the front of the mat. But then we need to get up off of our hip again, so use your hands to support you. Bring yourself up. If you need to use a block under your right hip to keep from rolling to it, you may. Your left leg is extended behind you. So from Swan, you may then transition to Sleeping Swan, which is the fold we usually do in a pigeon stretch in a typical hatha yoga class. So you just bring your hands in front of you and start to walk yourself out, propping with the forearms as needed, and then letting the arms move further out as you can, letting the head hang down, and then just breathing into whatever stretch you're feeling, trying to relax. Let go of tension. Give in to gravity. All right, and then we'll just move to the other side. So you can take your right knee back, and then take your left knee forward. You know, use your hands to help you get into this position, but try to make it as smooth as you possibly can. Take your right toes to extend the right leg back behind you. Relax that leg. And then trying to move more upright at first. So this is our Swan position. Maybe steady your gaze on a single point ahead of you. If you'd like to move your shin further forward, rock to your left hip and then adjust that shin so that the heel and knee are maybe more aligned. Come up off of that hip then again. And then when you're ready to transition to sleeping swan, you can start to walk your upper body down. Now this is also designed to be a quiet practice, and I know I am doing a lot of talking just because I want to guide you through these poses so you're familiar with them. But this is a chance to try to kind of clear your mind. You can put on some soft music for yourself if you like. Listen to a mantra running through your brain, or just listen to your breath here. I'll give you 30 seconds in quiet here. And then coming up out of your sleeping swan, we're going to move to saddle pose next, which the equivalent in hatha yoga would be like a Virasana or hero pose. But we want to widen our feet here and then sitting down between the feet on the floor. If you're unable to actually rest your hips on the floor between your feet, I do encourage you to try using a block or a tall book that you can sit on or something so that you can actually rest your hips on the ground. From here, we have an option to move back deeper into this. So you can start to walk the hands behind you. And here the arms are working to prop you up a little bit, but you're trying to really let go with the legs, with the hips. Maybe you come to the point of forearms on the ground. And if you're here and you feel like it would be nice, you can let the head fall back behind you. And then finally, this is going to be appropriate only for those whose hips are actually on the floor on the mat. You might be able to walk yourself all the way flat onto your back. And again, this is a pose of letting go. All of these we're trying to let go. You might be experiencing sensation. If it's pain, find a way to ease up. But if it's just an intensity that you can breathe through, do your best to stay in stillness, letting go bit by bit with each breath. Close your eyes if you like. And then carefully, gently making your way out of saddle. We're going to move to frog pose. I like to turn sideways on my mat for this one, just so I can make sure to keep my knees on my mat. So we're going to take the knees out wide as you can get them. And if you have really open hips in the straddle position, you might be able to get really low to the ground here. The feet extend back behind you in line with the knees, and then we're going to both sink the hips back and drop the chest down. So we're not walking all the way forward, but we're sinking the hips back, and then see if you can lower to forearms. It might feel a bit like a wide child's pose. Then drop your head, drop your chest, and of course, breathe. All right, moving out of frog pose, we're gonna come to our seated poses now. So go ahead and come to your sit bones, and we're gonna start with butterfly, which you probably are pretty familiar with. It's just, like your knees are like the wings of a butterfly, they splay out. Bring your heels in towards you if possible. Now, instead of trying to actively press your knees down, you're really just gonna allow your upper body to sink. Let the hands rest on the floor. This is a practice about doing less. So we're not trying to use effort to get deeper into these stretches. We're really just trying to let go, let go, let go. And then gravity is doing all the work for us. Because we hold these poses for a length of time, there really is a lot of ground that will start to be gained, but we're not intending that we go deeper. We're just allowing for it. You can relax your neck. Again, stay connected to your breath. And then moving up carefully, slowly out of your butterfly, which is the equivalent of the hatha Baddha Konasana. Now we're going to come to a straddle, and this is Dragonfly Pose. So you may want to adjust on your mat so that you can have your heels down on the mat if that's most comfortable for you. Instead of hard flexing the feet and engaging the quads, we're just going to let the legs relax and be really nice and easy. And then we have actually 3 options. So we can just fold straight down the middle, or you might in a practice find that you're going to the right, or you're going to go to the left, and you're just going to let your torso lean in that general direction. But let's for now just take this really just simple center fold. So you can start to walk the hands down the middle, supporting yourself as you need to, but letting the hands walk out of the way as you find more space to give in to this pose. If you notice a tendency to like grip or pull or try to strive to go deeper, see if you can let it go. In many ways, this is the challenge of the practice. Letting go where we feel we could do more, do less. Rising up out of Dragonfly Pose. Now we're going to come to half butterfly, which could also be considered half dragonfly, because we're going to keep the right leg out and we're going to tuck the left leg in. This is similar to like a Janu Shirshasana or Nita head pose in a hatha yoga class, but now we're just going to angle our bodies towards the right leg directly. Again, this leg is relaxed. It's very passive. This left knee just drops open naturally, and we just let our torso start to sink down. Don't reach for the foot. If you find you go deeper and you can naturally hold on to the foot and it feels comfortable, great. But mostly we want to relax the arms and relax the upper body. So we're not straining to grab anything in particular. Just softening, finding ease, giving in, letting go. That's the name of the game here. And notice where you feel sensation. So, the natural place might be in the leg, but you may also feel a stretch in the side body here alongside your back. So just let yourself notice. If it's causing pain, find a way to ease up. But if the sensation is manageable, tolerable, it feels safe, continue to breathe through it. Moving up slowly, gently, especially if that stretch felt intense. And we're going to switch sides. So tucking the right foot in, taking the left foot out. Set up your position carefully. Try to relax the low body and then just start to lean in. I always like to notice the difference sometimes from side to side. So I noticed how deep I was on the first side. And now as I come to the second side, I realize I'm nowhere near as deep because this stretch has just begun. But as you spend time here, it just becomes like almost slow motion falling towards the leg. Just let yourself give into it. Don't resist, but also don't push. And moving up slowly. We're going to stay seated and we're actually going to keep the right knee pointing forward, the right heel tucked in. We're going to move to shoelace by crossing the left leg over and trying to stack the knees. So this would be the equivalent, would be Gomukhasana in a hatha yoga practice, but we're not going to do anything with the arms. So in Gomukhasana, your arm would come up and you would grab the elbow. Here instead, we're just going to let the hands come to the floor and we're going to start to fold. The knees should be stacked. The feet on the sides should be completely relaxed, and then the upper body just gives in. Breathe. Soften. Let go. And moving yourself back up. we're just gonna change our legs around. So the left leg is gonna move to the bottom of the stack and the right leg is gonna come over the top. Try to adjust the feet so that the knees really stack one over the other and the feet are relaxed. And then just sinking down. So yin is actually complementary to other yoga practices where you're doing a lot more active moving, where you're charging up your muscles and working isometrically through stretches. This is, yin, yang. Yin is cool, still. Yang is warm and active, but it really is a great idea if you are usually practicing a more yang style of yoga to do a yin practice every once in a while, even if it feels counter to your nature, just for balance. So this is what we're doing here by trying to be still, quiet, and letting go, is finding balance to perhaps more active workouts that we do in the rest of our days. And then come on up. And we're going to transition to square pose. And we're actually going to keep the legs almost as they are now, just for the sake of an easy transition. But instead of keeping the left heel tucked by the hip, we're going to move the left shin forward so it lines up with the front edge of the mat. And then we're going to lay the right leg over the top of the left leg so that your right foot is now above the left knee and the right knee is above the left foot. This is square pose, but it is very similar to what we would call double pigeon stretch, or I've even heard this called fire log pose. We've got the shins stacked on top of each other. This can be a very deep stretch for the hips. If it's too intense for your knees, I'll show you an easy variation you can take. So you could actually come to your back, but the other thing you could do is you could just move the left foot to the floor and let the ankle cross above the thigh, and then you can use your hands behind you to move your chest towards your shin. If your knees are okay in this pose, you're going to keep your shins stacked and then just start to lean forward as we're doing with most of these. Try to relax, let go, and then give in to gravity with your upper body. And then coming up slowly, we're going to switch our legs around. So make your transition. Now the right leg is going to be on the bottom of the stack. The left foot stacks on top of the right knee, and then the left knee stacks on top of the right foot, but there might be a little gap. Just a reminder, the modified version of this would be put your foot on the floor. I'll turn to the side. Put your foot on the floor, cross the left ankle onto the right thigh. You could walk your right ankle further in, or you could use your hands behind you to move your heart to your chest. So that's getting the same stretch, but in a little bit of an easier position. This way, we're really gonna just try to give into gravity. So folding, releasing, relaxing. Hands are in front of you. Lean in. You Continue to walk the hands further forward as you can. Don't be scared to allow yourself to go to a deeper version. If it becomes too intense, you can back out, right? So if you go down and you get your forearms to the ground and you're like, oh yeah, that's too much, come back to your hands. You have the control here. We're trying to give in to gravity, but as it becomes too much, listen to your body and adjust accordingly. Don't hurt yourself. Don't stress yourself out. Just try to relax and give in here. And then come on up when you're ready. And if you can imagine, some of these poses we would normally hold a little longer. So if you're feeling the intensity here, just know that it can go a little further. Get used to it over time. Let's take both legs out now. This last seated pose we're going to do here is caterpillar, which is just a simple seated forward fold. Like Paschimottanasana, only we will not be engaging the legs. We're just going to let the feet flop and the quads are not toned up here. So then we're just going to let the upper body flop as well. And maybe the arms rest on the thighs, maybe the hands rest on the floor. As you go deeper, if you find that it's really easy to reach the hands out and hold the feet, and if that feels comforting to you, do so. But again, we're not straining or striving. We're just letting go, softening, giving gravity all of the work, handing it over to gravity. All right, and then using your hands to walk yourself back up, we're going to come to the floor, and we have a few more stretches to do. So the first one on our back that we're going to take today is Snail Pose, which starts out much like Halasana or Plow Pose. So we take the legs up and overhead and try to get the feet to the floor. If that does not work for you, if you cannot get the hips up and the legs overhead, you could just lay on your back with the legs in the air. So this would be a modified option. If you're able to get the legs overhead, you can maybe tuck the shoulders, but you're just going to let the arms relax and then maybe just bend the knees. Let the shins drop, let the knees come by your ears, and then just spend some time here. If you find you prefer working with legs straight, you can also straighten them. Let's slowly roll back to the spine. And now we're going to take Happy Baby, which should feel familiar. Bend the knees by the sides of the chest. Just let the hands rest on the feet. Really just let the back melt into the floor here. Let the weight of the knees drop down by the sides. The back of the head should be able to rest on the floor. You can close your eyes here. Breathe. Okay, bring the knees into the chest. And now we're just gonna do supine twists, so one in either direction. Keep your knees kind of hugged up towards your body. Take the arms out. You could take them to a full T, or you could bend the elbows to more of like a cactus shape. Let the knees drop to the right, just let them drop, and then turn your head to the left, and just let the weight of your left shoulder also sink to the floor. Breathing here. Again, you might close your eyes. Once we get to these floor ones, we really can let gravity take over not just our upper body, but the lower body. So our whole body is just trying to release and let go and melt into the floor. And if you find you've been challenged by coming to stillness for these longer stretches of time, it's probably an indicator that you need to do it a little bit more. I know that for me, this isn't my usual style of practice, but once I've gone through it, I oftentimes feel that, yep, that was just what I needed, even if it didn't feel like what my body's natural inclination was. Okay, bringing the knees back through center. And 2 minutes, we're just going to switch sides, letting the knees fall to the left this time and the head drop to the right. And bringing the knees back in. And our last official pose is going to be a supine butterfly pose, which is similar to Supta Baddha Konasana. So bring the edges of the feet to the floor and just let the knees drop wide. We're just going to passively let them relax. You can bring your arms by your sides, maybe tucking your shoulders underneath your upper back. Or if you like to, you can bring one hand to your belly, one hand to your heart, if that feels good to you. And again, just stillness here. You can close your eyes. Resist the urge to fidget or adjust too much. A lot of letting go. Though admittedly, I've done a fair amount of talking in this practice. Generally, a yin practice would be quieter, so there would be less talking, giving you a chance to concentrate on your breath or a mantra. Or I've also had the experience of teachers reading sayings or just quoting from the Yoga Sutra or something like that to give you a little bit of inspiration to help you go deeper into your practice while you explore each pose. So I encourage you to try this practice going forward in the future. This has really just been an introduction to the poses, so you'll recognize them in other practices. Stay with the breath. All right, and then at this point, you would just let your legs extend, let your arms rest, close your eyes, and take as long as you wanted to in Shavasana, corpse pose. So give yourself a little time to completely let go on the floor. I'm going to come back to seated pose just to end this practice, this shared practice with you. Tune into your breath. Notice how you're feeling. So I hope you've enjoyed this experience and learned a little bit more about yin yoga. Hopefully you will continue to practice going forward. I do have some other practices of this style on my channel. Let me know if you like the yin classes. And also let me know if you have any questions. Just leave those in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you again soon. The light in me recognizes and honors the light in you wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining me today for this shared practice. Namaste. Thanks. Take care.